to the back.
Hello, happy Friday, everybody. My dear friend, Dr. V, and I are back to continue our health series. And this month we have picked seasonal allergies. And I know that usually when people think of seasonal allergies, they're thinking about things like pollen. And right now we're moving into spring. We see a lot of flowers coming into bloom. Spring is happening. The trees are starting to blossom. So most people kind of consider that as the category of seasonal allergies. And that is a huge part of seasonal allergies. We do live amongst all of that in our environment. And some people are highly affected by different things that the trees and plants and stuff produce at this time of year. And in Texas, I know a lot of people that join us and are on our team, they deal with cedar fever and these cedar trees that pop with all of this pollen, and you can actually see it and hear the trees when they pop. And so many of my friends, when that time comes and they hear that sound and they see that poof of stuff come up from the trees, they run into their homes and they hide because they're going to be severely affected from that. And so we want to kind of discuss with you today, why do some people have those reactions? What can you do to kind of manage some of those symptoms and reactions with your body, and how different things connect, where most people think about how to handle the symptoms. You know, I've got a runny nose. What do I do to make the runny nose stop? But we want to dig a little bit deeper and look at, why do some people have allergies? Are you always born with them? Do they come on later? Do they go away ever? What does that look like? So I'm going to let Dr. V start us off, and I'm going to jump in a little more today with a couple tidbits. One quick story, actually. I have this great little scanner. It's called an Atovi scanner, and it's kind of like it's bioimpedance, like a Fitbit that people wear on their wrists, and they track, you know, their steps and their heartbeat and stuff. And it goes in and it checks frequencies in your body and matches them up to products that we suggest when we do like wellness consultations with people. And yesterday I was scanning a family, and they were concerned about immune situations in the home. One family member is being diagnosed possibly with a long-term COVID situation. The two smaller children in the home have been struggling with what seemed to be a repetitious cold. And so when I scanned them, it was fascinating because all the family members but one had actually really strong immune systems. Only one of the young children had a challenged immune system, and I could tell by the products the scanner picked. The other ones were actually all linking up where their immune systems were being challenged from seasonal threats. And so their allergies were actually depleting the immune systems, where the other child had a depleted immune system naturally in this certain moment of his life, and therefore he was becoming more susceptible to allergies. So it's kind of a curious reverse role there with different family members and how we could support them. And most of them were actually reacting to trees, not the flowers. The mother actually runs an organic flower farm. And so it wasn't the flowers and the pollen that we would have suspected in the home, or maybe even the dog. Or the changing of the weather, you know, going from cold to hot, literally 40 degrees in the night or less, going above 70 degrees in the day, sometimes in the matter of an hour. So lots of different aspects, and then how it attaches to our emotions. So I'm going to go ahead and let V get started, kind of narrow it down into some categories, and I'll jump in with some little tidbits of things that I've seen along the ways.
All right. Okay, hi everyone. This is Dr. V. Like Celeste said, we're going to jump in with seasonal allergies and just a little introduction for those of you who haven't been listening. I'm Dr. V. I'm a naturopathic doctor and acupuncturist in Portland, Oregon. And really my goal is to empower people to take charge of their health. So I believe that we all have positive contributions that we can give to the world, and we all have our unique way of impacting the world. And when people are unhealthy, you don't have the energy to do that. So by freeing up energy from these health concerns, I really hope that people have that energy to give to the community and to improve the world around them. All right, so when we think about allergies, like Celeste said, there's some typical approaches, right? Really, we can break it down into 3 approaches. Avoid, that's like staying indoors, minimizing interaction with pollen or whatever you know your allergies to be, just avoiding it, which can be pretty restrictive. You can suppress your symptoms by taking allergy medications. Antihistamines are a common one. This is stuff like Zyrtec, for instance, Claritin, or decongestant. So, you know, when you have a stuffy nose, sometimes you'll take a decongestant and just help that go away. And then for some people, desensitizing your immune system by using allergy shots. So that's the typical conventional approach, which is fine for some people, but there are some problems. Sometimes you have breakthrough symptoms, right? Like maybe you've used the maximum dose of the medications you have and you still have some symptoms because this year is a particularly bad year or what have you. You know, your body's gotten used to the medication and the dose and it's just not working as well as it used to. You can have a rebound effect. This is especially true of decongestants. Like that's actually even something that they warn you about when you take decongestants is when you stop the medication, you can actually have it come back worse than before because you've just suppressed your system. And so it's trying to react to something and it's going to keep upping that effect until when you take that medication away, it comes back and it's just worse. And another problem is that it's very restrictive. Like, wouldn't you like to be able to go outside and enjoy the springtime? I know I would. So we also see that this is becoming an increasing issue because pollen counts are actually higher than ever before. And with climate change, scientists have predicted that actually it's going to keep increasing, that not only are the pollen counts going to be higher, but we're going to keep having longer allergy seasons. And in fact, when compared to 1990, in the US and Canada, allergy season is now starting 20 days earlier, and the pollen counts are 20% higher than before. So it really is a problem where, you know, especially if your medications aren't working for you now, like it's only getting worse. So we really want to find long-lasting, effective, and health-building types of treatments for allergies. We don't want to just suppress the immune system or avoid the stressor because you really can't just lock yourself indoors all the time, you know? So we really want to take an approach that takes into consideration why is the body overreacting to these should be harmless things, right? You see people that can go outside and breathe the air and be totally fine. So I like to think of it as total body burden. So, you know, we all have different abilities to handle stress and different sensitivities, but really it boils down to how much stress you're putting on the body versus how quickly it can resolve that stress. And it's different amounts for each person, but it's still the same principle. And
With
when we
that,
think, oh, go
I
ahead.
would like to just jump in with that book, When the Body Says No and Stress-Related Diseases. It actually has an area in there that discusses how stress can trigger allergies. And a lot of the people that I work with, I'll ask them, right before you had this major allergy breakout, what was going on in your life with that, you know, that day? And almost every time there was a huge stress factor that led into the allergy response.
Absolutely. And there's so many reasons for that that are complex and biochemical. But one of the things that I can think of right now, just off the top of my head, is when you're stressed out, your body releases certain hormones, and those hormones actually suppress the immune system. Like cortisol, one of our main stress hormones, suppresses the immune system a little bit. And that's why, prednisone, that steroid that we give to people when they're having some sort of issue and they need their immune system to be suppressed a little bit, or hydrocortisone that you put on your skin if you're having a rash, for instance, those are all actually based on the natural occurring thing in our body, cortisol, because it does suppress the immune system. So when you think about it that way, it makes so much sense that when you're stressed out, your immune system isn't going to work as well. And then it's just going to react differently than you want it to. So some of the potential stressors, when I think about a seasonal allergy, it's environment, for instance, and I'm not just talking about the actual pollen itself that you're allergic to, but it can also be your general air quality, your water quality, the other toxins that are in your environment. If you don't have good air circulation in your house, if you have moldy air, if you have a gas stove and you don't run a vent when you're cooking food, these are all ways that our body can be burdened and stressed out if we're having to deal with that all of the time. And when our lungs are being exposed to, for instance, toxic cleaning supplies or unclean air all the time, or these off-gassing from gas stoves, etc., then it just gets a little bit more damage, and it's going to be more reactive when we come across pollen. The liver, which helps to detox everything, if it has to detox all these other things, then when pollen comes along, it really can't react to that the way we want it to. So think about your environment. Another big major area, whenever people have bad allergies, one of the things I look at is, what are they eating? Are they eating things that they are sensitive to or allergic to? We have a webinar specifically about food allergies and sensitivities. If you haven't seen that, you can go check that out to get a little bit more idea of what those actually mean, what the differences are. But what I find is people say, hey, I don't know why, I've never been allergic to these things before, but now all of a sudden I'm developing seasonal allergies. Is this just normal because I'm getting older? I would say it's not getting older that's the problem. It's that your body has just accumulated these stressors. And one of the things is, if you have a food sensitivity or allergy that you haven't identified and you keep eating that thing, your body is constantly battling something. And so then when the pollen count is a little bit higher, you will also react to that because your immune system is already just hyper reactive to everything. And then here's another thing that it has to react to. Improper diet. It's similar to the environment. If your body has to process these things that just are extra difficult to process, then it doesn't have the energy to react to the environment the way you'd like it to. Nutrient imbalances. And so actually, when our immune system is doing something, when we are detoxing some stuff, when we have to deal with allergies or inflammation in the body, it uses up a lot of nutrients. We also, many of us don't get the nutrients that we need because many Americans don't have a well-balanced diet. And even when we do, because our soil is so depleted, the food that we're eating, even though it's good food, it might not have all of the nutrients that we need in it. So we might be missing some of those key nutrients like zinc, for instance, magnesium. We'll talk a little bit more about that in the supplement part. But we need those things in order to stabilize our immune system, to resolve the inflammation, and to make sure our body responds properly to any stress. And then one other major piece that Celeste mentioned is mental and emotional stress. So any stress, whether it's a physical stress, a biochemical stress, or mental emotional stress, it has an impact on your body. in terms of the way that your biochemistry changes in response to it, in terms of the way your immune system responds. So mental emotional stress is also a major factor in seasonal allergies. Celeste, do you have anything to add to that?
Oh, yes, I would like to jump in and just mention that when I first started talking about allergies and people would ask me, are you allergic to anything? And my natural response was, no, I'm not allergic to anything. Because I'd always think about, trees and pollen and stuff like that. And I'm not a person that has ever had that kind of reaction, except for one time when I moved to California and they have these beautiful yellow trees they call acacia trees. And apparently, when they flower into that beautiful yellow tree, a lot of people respond, kind of like the cedar in Texas. And it was interesting to me because really the only thing I've ever had a negative response to is man-made things like bleach. I have a huge, horrible reaction to bleach. Traditional medication that they would give you from the doctors, like penicillin. There's parts about that in one of my first classes before we started the health series. That can also be found on YouTube. But the actual pollens and stuff weren't really my reaction until the acacia tree, and it also lined up with all the sudden kind of reaction with garlic. And because of my body's responses to traditional medicine over the years, I've had to look for alternative care for my body. And there is a very, what I would consider unusual, untraditional method that I was able to use for garlic and acacia. And I love garlic. I mean, I want that in almost all of my meals. And so when I started to respond to it poorly, it really upset me. And of course, the response to this tree, which I had never had before, was new to me. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is what people are talking about when they have these allergies. This is miserable. And so
Yeah.
at the time I was working with a woman that does theta healing, and it's very similar to another program that I've worked with that is NLP. And it's kind of like, if you consider our bodies like a computer, there are certain programs that run. And there's an IR, internal representation system, that how we filter, perceive, it's all relative to our experiences and such. Some people believe that there is a possibility that we've had previous life experiences, and that when we come into this life, we might carry memories of those previous experiences. Whether it is true or not true, irrelevant to me. But in this theta healing, she did what she calls downloads, and she will check the body through muscle reflexology, ask a lot of questions, and basically find out where the source, where the body is, why it's responding in this way now. And she was able to do what she called a download and literally eradicate those reactions for me. And I can't explain it. I don't know how it worked, why it worked. I just know it did for me. Again, it was, a lot of my friends were like, well, that's a little woo woo. I get it. But, sometimes it's some of those things that we don't consider that we find the biggest possibilities for ourselves. And just getting out of our own way sometimes, in the sense of what we have come to understand and believe, that maybe there's things that we don't understand yet. I mean, science is learning new things all the time. And so I just want to let people know that, commonly when we have reactions, we're told to go to the store and buy these over-the-counter things, or go and see our doctor and get these medications. And there could be other factors that could help you resolve these issues. So it's just kind of a little side note story that worked for me on two new reactions that I had in my body in my adult years that I'd never had before or experienced before.
Yeah, thank you for that. That actually reminds me of, there's a really good acupuncture technique called NAET, and I won't attempt to explain what it stands for because I don't think I will say it correctly, but it's an allergy technique. And there's the idea that each substance has a energetic vibration, and if you are not reacting to something that if it's like a food or if it's trees and pollen, like those are things that should be harmless to the body. But if there is some sort of disharmony in the resonance between your body and the thing that you're reacting to, this is a technique where you can align those so you don't react the same way. So in a similar way, it's like there are these potential energetic things going on that maybe we don't totally understand, but has worked really well for a lot of people. And we're finding out more and more these days that there's a mental, like a subconscious programming aspect to the way that we respond to things, the way that we perceive things, the way that things stress us out or don't stress us out. And I think this is where the, what is it called? Oh my gosh, I'm losing words because I didn't sleep very much. When somebody gives you something and they say this is going to work, but there's like nothing in it, and
The placebo,
that's the word I was looking for. Yeah, so this is where we think the placebo effect is coming from, is that there's a subconscious programming in your mind that says this works or this doesn't work, and because of that belief in your brain, it actually is so powerful, because our brains are actually so powerful that it has things work or not work based on your perception and your belief and your subconscious programming. So I think these techniques that may seem a little woo-woo or aren't completely understood, the mechanism of how they work, may be playing into some of those things where we are getting at a deeper part of our brain that we don't access on a regular basis.
absolutely.
Okay. And I really want to emphasize the gut, because a lot of the times when people come in with allergies, it really comes down to this. It comes down to what they're eating, helping to decrease the gut inflammation, because the gut really normally has very tight control over what comes in and out of the body. But when it's inflamed, it's like a broken gate. And now anything can come in, and if things are coming into the body that shouldn't be there, then the immune system has to react to it. And the more the immune system is being activated, then the more the immune system is going to react inappropriately to things that it shouldn't react to. And then at the same time, weirdly, because it's reacting to all these things it's not supposed to, it doesn't have energy to fight off some other stuff like infections and viruses and bacteria. So it's kind of a weird, like overreacting in some areas and then underreacting in other areas. So then you're more prone to infections, but then you're hyperreacting to pollen or foods that you shouldn't react to. So it's always a really big part of healing allergies is to take a look at what's going on in your gut.
Absolutely. And one thing, a lady that I work with that has been fighting different allergies with food, environment, she gets hot spots, and there's one particular hot spot that comes up on her shoulder. And a lot of people don't understand where their skin conditions are coming from. And a lot of it, again, it's all connected. When you add in the emotional factors, and you add in the allergy factors and the gut factors, a lot of that will all come out in the skin as your body, telling you, hey, we've got an imbalance happening here and I need it cleared up. And usually I don't commonly think of hot spots on humans. I think about it with like pets. When you feed them a food that they're allergic to, a lot of people are familiar with their dogs getting hot spots reaction from the food. That absolutely happens to humans as well. I mean, we're all mammals. We're all living in the same environment. We're all, eating the foods. And as we mentioned prior, unfortunately, our environment is just not as plentiful with the nutrients as it used to be, and we're working to get it back into that position so that our food has all those vitamins and minerals that it used to have. But when we're spraying a lot of these chemicals on our foods, we're not getting the nutrients back into the soil properly. There's just factors that create more challenges. So we have to be more aware of our own bodies and our own health advocates, really, to find out what balances our systems best.
Yeah, this is a complete side note, but speaking of food and how it affects the body, I was listening to a podcast the other day with some doctors, and they were talking about how eating organic meats, especially if you eat meat, is really important because of all the hormones that get put into animals that aren't organic, to just plump them up and make them more muscular, so that they can sell it for a higher price, or get the animals out the door a little bit faster, growing them faster so that they can use less feed to feed them. And they were talking about how a patient of theirs, a man, had started growing breasts, and he was just like, what is going on here? And it was because he was eating a lot of non-organic chicken. And it was really interesting because of all the hormones that are in the foods. Like, people's hormones are getting disrupted. So you can just imagine the other toxins that might be there if you're not eating like really clean foods and vegetables and meats.
I think you touched on something really important there about the hormones and meat levels as well, and the responses that can have on the body. Years ago, when I was a kid, I mean, I think I was less than 10 at the time. I will never forget a documentary that I watched on TV about where our meat companies were giving away the meat to other countries that was not sellable in the US market because it had too many hormones and such in it.
Yes.
And unfortunately, what was happening is they were seeing this erratic development with the young females in the villages where this meat was being served. They even had reports of young women at the age of 2 that were starting to show signs of developing in their breast area. They were having children by the age of 8 and younger starting their menstrual cycles. And they linked it all back to the hormones that they were eating in the meat.
Well, now that we're on this complete sidebar, I'm going to take it a little bit further. So I've had parents bring in kids that are 7 and 8 who have started their menses, and they are concerned, like, why is this happening? This seems really early. And I was looking up the guidelines for when is it considered, early or premature development. And they've changed the guidelines because so many children in the United States are having their period at around 7 or 8 now, where it used to be 15, right? 14 or 15 when you're like in middle school or high school. But now kids are developing so early that they've changed the guidelines to say that it's now normal, that it's not considered early. But I think what's happening is that everyone is being exposed to so many hormones and endocrine disrupting chemicals that everyone is having this shift. It's not normal just because it's happening all over the place. It's not optimal. It's not the way our body should be developing, but it is becoming common. So not healthy, not normal, but common. So
Interesting.
there's that little sidebar. But anywho, back to our regularly scheduled programming here. um, like seasonal allergies actually also brings up this um, related topic of pet allergies. And it's a similar thing where if you're developing more allergies to your pet, whereas before you never had it, you might want to look at those same factors. And in addition to that, because your pets are living creatures, you also want to look into those factors for them. And I found that I used to volunteer at an animal shelter, and I would work in the hospital because I have medical experience. So I would work in the pet hospital and at the shelter and handle these little sick kittens. And, when they come into the shelters, they usually get a little cold and they're sick and they're stressed out. And I noticed that being around those cats who are stressed out and sick and maybe they have other stuff going on as well because they just got picked up off of the street. I reacted much more to those cats than I do to normal cats. Like I have 2 cats at home. I'm slightly allergic to them, but usually totally okay. But if the cats are stressed out, then I think they actually put off more dandruff and more dandruff that is allergen causing. So that is something to look into if you have pets or you are allergic to pets, and maybe this is kind of a new thing, or you're reacting more severely than you ever have before, then look into those factors, not only for yourself, but also for the pets that are involved. So a couple of foods that I typically recommend for people who are having seasonal allergies. One is nettles. It's just so helpful for stabilizing the mast cells, which are the cells that produce the histamines, which then produce the runny nose and the watery eyes and the itchiness and all of that. So nettles, you can, in the Pacific Northwest, they often have them at farmers markets, for instance. Fresh nettles in the spring, people start picking them in the wild. Make sure though, if you're going out and picking nettles, because the government does go out and spray stuff on trails. So if you're just going out and you're thinking like, oh, this is wild crafted nettles from the forest, like it might not be the best for you, because the Forest Service does actually go out there sometimes and sprays everything down to just keep the weeds and blackberry bushes, etc., intact, making sure that those don't grow out of control. And so your nettles, if you're just going out somewhere, make sure it's a place that they haven't sprayed. So look that up. You can also get it if it's not locally available to you. Usually you can also get nettles dried in like a health food store or in a tea. There's usually some sort of nettle tea, or you can buy it online. It works really well. It's just kind of like a grassy flavor. It's pretty mild, so it's nothing really offensive tasting to people, like a lot of healthy foods.
Yeah, just throw it in a smoothie with some honey.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, then you can use the local raw honey. Yeah, making sure it's local, because those are the pollens that you're reacting to. So making sure that it's local and it's raw, because if it's pasteurized, then you're kind of taking away some of those benefits of the honey. And then another really good one is if you eat fish, the fish that are really high in omega-3s, like salmon, are good, because those omega-3s really stabilize the immune system and help to combat the inflammatory response of allergens. A couple of supplements that you could get. So I don't know why I put nervines on there. I think I just forgot to delete that from a previous PowerPoint, so ignore that. But nettles do also come as a supplement, so that's a good thing to take. Zinc is just very good for the immune system, and sometimes that's the reason why your immune system is out of control. Isoquercetin, it's kind of a long word, but it is another thing that is very good for stabilizing those cells that produce histamines. You can also get quercetin in quail eggs. I don't know how many of you have access to quail eggs, so it's probably not the best source because most people can't get quail eggs, or I'm not really sure how many quail eggs you'd have to eat to get the isoquercetin that you need, but it's fairly available as a supplement. Celeste, did you have something to say?
No, I was just giggling about the quail eggs and how many about that.
Like tiny little things. They're delicious. I love them, but they're very small. Anywho, yeah, and vitamin C is another really good one for just stabilizing your immune system, and it's an antioxidant, so it really helps to combat some of that inflammatory response. And then, of course, we have to mention some doTERRA products here. Ooh, I don't know why that didn't load. Tri-Ease is actually a supplement, and I'll have Celeste actually talk about this a little bit more.
So Tri-Ease is a small capsule. It's really kind of like a small vitamin E, very easy to swallow. And it just has 3 oils in it, actually. You can actually make these yourself. And I've done this for somebody. I was actually setting up a presentation at someone's home, and we had started the diffuser. And in the diffuser, we had put a bunch of floral scents. One of the gals that entered the home had a reaction to pollens and flowers. And so she started getting sniffly. So I realized her response, and asked her if she had, negative response to flowers and such. And she said, oh yeah, it's actually really hard for me to be outside in the spring. And so of course I immediately wanted to turn off the diffuser. And she says, no, I enjoy the smell of it. And she wasn't reacting the same as she did to the natural pollens outside, because the oils are a little bit different with their purity. And sometimes, like when people have a cedar reaction on the scan, we'll actually see that the suggested product is cedar oil, because kind of like an allergy where they scratch the skin and they just slowly introduce the allergen to the body, and then the body learns how to deal with that. The Tri-Ease is actually just lemon, peppermint, and lavender. And you can just put a couple, 2 to 3 drops in a capsule, and you take that. And I gave her one of those. I made one up really quick. I didn't have the pre-made capsules on hand at the time. And in less than 5 minutes, she had complete relief and was able to enjoy the time we spent there. The diffuser stayed running. And everyone in the room was just like, oh my gosh, they had known her for years where I had just met her. And I said, oh my gosh, for all the time that we've seen her suffering, and you just cleared that up in 5 minutes. Like, how did that happen? And it's just 3 simple oils, lemon, peppermint, and lavender. And that's what's in the Tri-Ease products. It's just a little bit easier to buy it with the pre-made capsules, so you're not sitting there having to get all your 3 bottles out and build your capsules. You should really pre-build them, because the oils will eventually disintegrate the capsules. So you'll just grab your jar to find a big ball of mush at the bottom, pretty much. I've done that.
This is from experience.
I will say that the Tri-Ease is very effective for most areas with the standard pollens. We do find that in the Texas area, we have to add a little booster for the people that are reacting to the cedar fever scenarios there.
Yeah, when we go back to that idea of the body burden, there is a certain level of allergens in the air that, it's just too much for anything really. Like you just have to bring out all of the tools and maybe stay inside. Yeah, because I also don't normally have.
Sorry. I said, especially with all the fires that we've had over the last several years.
Yes, which is that additional burden. Like we've seen a lot of issues with that, and afterwards, how people continue to have weaker lungs or detoxification issues because the wildfires actually release a lot of toxins into the air. It's not just the ash, it's when wood like that burns, it releases a lot of chemicals, and the fire itself releases chemicals, the wood that it's burning releases chemicals, and that does damage people, and people have to detox from that. Firefighters actually have a lot of issues like that as well, and we really do have to have concerted effort to detoxify from fires. But what was I going to say? Oh, I was going to say, I normally don't have seasonal allergies, but there have been times when the pollen count has been really, really high and I get a little sniffly. And that's when I know, like, okay, pollen counts are really crazy high, because I don't usually react to trees or grasses, etc. It's just not something that I've ever had to deal with regularly. Okay. Another nice one, easy to remember, is breathe. So this is when you're already kind of stuffed up and your lungs are hurting a little bit. Has some nice things in it to just open up the passages. Peppermint being, I think, a big component of breathe.
Oh yes. Yeah, it's if you want to do just a quick kind of homemade inhaler, a lot of people, when they're in between the ability to get the inhaler from their doctors, and I've actually had a few people leave their inhalers by using this product. There's
Awesome.
a breathe stick that you can use. It's kind of similar. Oh, what was that stuff my mom used to use when I was a kid? Vicks, I think it was.
Yeah, like the vapor rub.
Yes, a vapor rub, and it kind of warms up the chest area. The peppermint's going to have that same effect, but if you just put a drop in the palm of your hand,
Nope, you muted yourself.
eyeballs or anything because of the hot oils in there. But if you just put a drop in the palm of your hand, rub your palms together and cup your hands over your nose and inhale that, it is absolutely amazing.
Oh yeah.
It's really lovely if you're, struggling with any kind of respiratory situation, or if you're, I've been getting into breath work lately, and it's a great way just to open up your lungs before you do your breath work.
Another area I really like to have people apply this. This is a tip from one of the other practitioners in my clinic that uses a lot of doTERRA products, is along the lung meridian. So that would be like on the inside of your elbow, in the crook of your elbow. That's a nice place to put it. And then kind of, if you just kind of go down the thumb side of your arm from that spot, that's kind of where the lung meridian is in Chinese medicine. So if you're having allergies, that's a great place to apply breathe, and that's very helpful for opening up your lungs and your sinuses.
Fascinating.
I know, it's cool, huh? DDR prime, it's not something that people would normally think about for allergies, but it is supporting that cellular level of all the damage that is being done with all of the stressors that we have. So if you have a lot of stressors and it's increasing your allergies, one of the things you want to do is to just stabilize your cells. And DDR prime really is a very helpful thing to get at that piece of it.
Absolutely. And that product also comes in a capsule as well.
Oh, nice. Yeah. So you can intake it, or you can use it topically or diffuse it. And then the thing that isn't showing up here is actually, I think, lemon, I want to say, but
Yes,
some good single oils are rosemary. Rosemary is really good for opening up the passages of the airways. Lemon, as you heard, it's in Tri-Ease. It's great because it's cleansing and freshening. It also helps the liver to detoxify. It's great for diffusing or ingesting. Peppermint is another one that I really love to use. Also opens up the airways, also is in Tri-Ease. And for people who have itchiness with their allergies, topically, peppermint, maybe if you mix it with another oil so it's not so stingy, but rubbing that, yeah, carrier oil, rubbing that on your itchy spots, it really helps to take away the itch. So that's been a lifesaver in situations where people have hives. And then turmeric, just as a way to help the liver detoxify. All right, any other ones you can think of?
Oh, there's a bunch of them, but we'll keep it simple.
Yeah,
This
these
is
are like
great.
the heavy hitters, you know, Tri-Use is going to take care of most of it. And then if you have these single oils, you can always grab them if you don't have the Tri-Use.
Absolutely.
All right, that is it. Here, there's my website if you want to check that out. And this is the way to contact me. All right. So we are gonna actually take a break next month. I'll be doing a lot of traveling, so I won't be around. So we're gonna take a little bit of a break, but we will be back in May, the next health series.
Great. Thank you so much, B. And yes, we're both traveling next month, but we do have our previous classes. There's 5 other classes on YouTube, and I will probably release my private health class that was with Dr. V and Dr. Beelan, a little bit about my health story, some of the things that I started with and have worked through. And I'll let some more people watch that next month. And then we'll see you in May.
All right. See everyone.
Bye. Thanks for joining us.